Chefs of Reddit. What's your number one useful cooking tip? Story 1 Pastry chef here. Not my best tip, but the only one I can think of this early on my day off. Flouring pans for cakes is a step not to be skipped, but when it comes to chocolate cakes, it looks awful so for dark cakes. I use cocoa powder instead. Story 2 Not a food tip, but a cooking tip. A falling knife has no handle. If you drop a knife, get the out of the way and let it hit the floor. Washing it is easy enough. Try to catch it and you could be visiting the emergency room. Story 3 A chef here. Hopefully some of this is helpful. This is general stuff that applies to most people I train or speak to. Don't watch those cooking videos on Facebook, Tasty, etc., or at least don't follow them to AT. They usually don't follow good cooking fundamentals and often overcook their meats or have weird steps in them that a chef would probably never do. I usually see them and think they are awful. Learn how to properly dice an onion into small and even sized chunks. Raw white onion belongs on way less food than you think it does, especially when it's cut into large, uneven chunks. If you want onions on something, try sweating, roasting, caramelizing, or seasoning them with some acid or salt. Having a sharp knife and learning how to do basic cuts is very helpful. Learning to cut fresh herbs finely without damaging them, or cut consistent sizes in meats and vegetables for even cooking can help out the taste quite a bit. Use more salt than you think you need. Don't add it all too early into the cooking stage, but when you're doing your final taste before you serve something, make sure it's seasoned. Use different sizes of salt depending on what you're doing. Typically, seared meat is better with coarse salt. Fine salt is best used when you don't want the texture of coarse salt or you're worried it won't incorporate properly into the food. Once you learn to season with salt, then balancing dishes with acid is another good step. Citrus juices, vinegars work well and can really take things to the next level. Taste often and at every stage of cooking. Make sure you taste it before you serve it. You probably need less garlic than you think. Even though it's delicious, the same goes with herbs and spices. When I was starting out, I always overdid it. Really good ingredients can speak for themselves. I always try to look at 3 recipes before I cook something new. From there, I usually freestyle, but if you're less confident, just pick one. By looking at a few, you get a better idea of key ingredients and ratios. If you overcook meat a lot, buy a probe thermometer. You should never overcook meat again. Another meat tip. Think of where on the animal the meat came from. If it's a muscle, they use a lot legs, but etc., it probably needs low and slow cooking. If it's a muscle, they use a little back, tenderloin, etc., probably needs high heat and a faster cook time. There are exceptions to that rule, but that works more often than not. Put butter on or in nearly everything. Mount it at it while swirling or whisking into a sauce at the end of cooking. Baste meat or fish in it. Chefs put butter into way more things than you think. Edit my first gold. Thanks a lot. Hey, Race, another tip. If you're cooking with alcohol, make sure you fully cook out all of the alcohol before adding more liquid. Otherwise, the taste will linger on, and it can be very overpowering. Story 4 Learn cooking techniques instead of recipes. Don't approach recipes like they're magic spells in the Harry Potter universe. If you wiggle your nose wrong, or put in a speck too much of some seasoning, you're not going to end up with a completely different dish. Alton Brown does an incredible job of teaching a cooking technique and then showing you a recipe that applies that technique. If you learn a process instead of a rote recipe, you will know how to cook dozens of dishes. And it's really the only way to develop skills in the kitchen. Story 5 Roasted garlic. Garlic is cheap, and you don't even need a ceramic garlic roaster, although having one in the kitchen looks good. Just slice off the top of the bulbs and cover with a little olive oil, salt, and pepper. Wrap in tin foil and place in the oven at 350 Fahrenheit. For 50 to 60 minutes, you can add it to sauces, spread on bread, etc., etc. A neat feature of roasted garlic is that over time, its chemical composition breaks down into more and more sugar. So any sauce you make with it will become sweeter. I make tomato sauce with it, and it's delicious to begin with, but just a few days later, it tastes twice as good. Edit can't believe I forgot the absolute best use for roasted garlic mashed potatoes. Story 6 Only cook with wine you would actually drink yourself. This means don't use cooking wine, as in that garbage that is all salty from the grocery. Just stick to wines you'd find on the shelf that aren't in the cooking aisle. This does not mean that if you don't like dry, white wines that you shouldn't cook with them. Just don't use wine that has been doused with seawater. Edit, I feel like I might have come off as a snob. I didn't mean only cook with wines that are top shelf. Cheap wine is just fine. Story 7 Not a chef, but have work in a kitchen. Best tip I ever got was for frying eggs. Have it on a medium temp, not roasting hot. And once you crack your egg, cover it. Use a pot lid or something. This means your egg cooks from the top and the bottom, so you get a perfect runny yolk without any undercooked white around it. I use this every single time I fry eggs, and I've never looked back. Edit out of everything I've ever posted on Reddit. This is my highest rated comment. You guys must really love eggs also. To save so many replies, no, I don't flip my eggs, but apparently the lid helps reduce yolk breakage if you want to flip yours. No, I don't tend to get crispy whites or a film over the yolk, but I use a glass lid so I can watch, and I take the lid off as soon as the white is cooked. And apparently adding a tiny amount of water like drops to the pan speeds up the process even more. Story 8. If you're cooking with chicken or season aggressively. Both meats are wonderful seasoning sponges. Find a regional spice map or guide and start combining flavors. Edit, since a lot of people are asking, ID say this is a good place to start when trying to figure out spice mixes. Story 9. A clove of garlic is different than a bulb of garlic. I'm a terrible chef. Edit, nice to learn I'm not the only one who has made this mistake. The house smelled of garlic for 2 days after. Story 10. Not a chef, but cooking is my hobby. Number 1 rule in my book is follow a recipe exactly at least once before around with it. I've seen too many people get angry or frustrated because they decided to substitute X for Y, and then the dish turns out badly. Try the recipe first, then decide if there's too much garlic or if cinnamon would taste better to you than nutmeg. If you hate peeling garlic, take as many cloves as you need, toss them in a bowl, cover with another bowl, and shake the out of it. The peels get knocked off. Also, margarine, just use butter. Story 11. Heat will remain in your food after turning off the stove, and it will continue to cook. So pay attention to your timing. E.g., when you want to add cheese to your omelet, cheese should melt in a plate with heat of the eggs. Otherwise, you will have over-dried omelet. Same as overcooked pasta. Story 12. Most recipes tell you to fry onions before browning meat. Don't. The onions will add liquid to the pan, meaning your meat boils rather than browns properly. If you own a decent pan, you shouldn't even need to add oil. Add your meat to a dry pan. Don't overcrowd the pan. Batch fry if necessary. Another mistake is to not brown your meat enough. Listen out for the frying noise: snap, crackle, pop to die off. This is the Maillard reaction, resulting in much more flavor. Edit, I'm talking about minced ground meat here, not steaks. Story 13. A master chef told me this in culinary school. You can always stop cooking. Take it off the burner or out of the oven if you need to. Surprisingly helpful tip. Story 14. Former line cook here. Would never presume to call myself chef. Extremely disrespectful to do so in kitchens if you're not a chef. Anyhow, here are my tips. Many of these can be summarized as clean as you go. If you're looking to cook for a living, know that good chefs love a cook who can clean as they go. Take the extra 2 to 10 seconds and do things right. I know cooking can be extremely hectic and stressful, but working in a filthy, disorganized kitchen will only add to your own and everyone else's stress. I've heard it said that a good chef is someone who is really good at organizing things. I find this to be very true. Dishes, take the extra 2 seconds and rinse the dish while it's still wet with food. You're investing in your own future. This will save you a lot of time scrubbing later on. Also, stack or otherwise organize the item intelligently. If you have a dishwasher, this will help them do their job better, which will in turn help you and the whole team for that matter. Dish sink, for the love of all that is good in this world. Don't put huge chunks of food into the sink that will later have to be scooped up by hand. Take the extra 2 seconds and scrape the food into the garbage or compost. Microwave. Don't dismiss the microwave as a tool of the unsophisticated. Many of the best chefs in the world use the microwave intelligently. Freeze sauces and put them in freezer bags stacked in the freezer. Don't be pretentious about using a microwave, but also learn its strengths and weaknesses. Knives, learn how to cut properly. Search for some videos. I believe Gordon Ramsay has a good one. Use your knuckles to guide the blade. Keep your thumb back and your fingers tucked. It will feel awkward at first. Just practice and never let yourself do it the wrong way. Again, take the extra time and do it right. Always hand wash knives. Never put them in the sink with other dishes and never put them through a dishwasher. Always keep them honed. Cooking professionally. Whenever you have a free minute, clean up your station. Check your food to see if you need to restock. Throw garbage in the trash, etc. Never throw scraps on the ground. Again, take the extra few seconds and throw them in the garbage. Always have a garbage can nearby, or use a dirty pan bucket or bus tub for garbage. Empty it regularly. One of my biggest pet peeves is people who just scrape food particles onto the floor. Pacing and timing. Often, as a cook, you will get swamped with orders, and you can become very overwhelmed knowing your servers and customers are waiting, often impatiently. Learn exactly how many items you can cook simultaneously. If your station is at maximum capacity, don't let yourself get stressed out because of the pressure. If your station is full, there's often nothing more you could do to speed up the process. The food has to cook. If you get stressed, you may drop something, mess up an order, or serve something undercooked. This will not make anything better. Again, take the extra few seconds and do it right. Let the server know if you're at capacity and don't let them stress you out. They're typically only worried about their tip and have little to no understanding of your situation. Experienced servers will know this, and they are very valuable. Appreciate them. Kitchen culture. Often in kitchens, there is a culture of extreme urgency. This often lends the whole team to be more stressed than necessary. Of course, you want to be fast, but the best way to consistently put out quality food at a fast rate is to be calm and efficient. Oftentimes, having this kind of attitude can cause conflict as cooks and other service workers are almost gluttons for stress. And if they see you calm, they will try to get aggressive. A team that is calm and efficient is worth its weight in gold. A single cook who gets extremely stressed out can stress the whole team out. That's all I have for now. Not much food related, but I think a lot of people overlook the basics of the environment and just want to focus on food. But if you're serious about cooking, you should take every detail into consideration. Having a clean and organized kitchen will ultimately make your food better. Story 15, not a chef, but I've done lots of home and commercial cooking and had enough criticism compliments that I feel confident enough to post. Take your time. The pan doesn't need to be at maximum heat. The sizzle doesn't mean it's ready to flip. It means it's cooking. If it can simmer another minute, let it. I understand time-sensitive dishes and being in a hurry, but nearly every dish I've ever cared to try or throw together, or anything benefit from time and care. On the note of throwing things together, never be afraid to experiment, especially at home. It's fun, and folks that don't cook can and will mistake an experimental move for the better as a stroke of genius on your part. Story 16, clean it up as you use it. The longer you leave it, the longer it takes to clean it. Use a food scale, especially if you bake. A cup of something isn't always a cup. A food scale takes the guesswork out. Controlling your heat includes putting a thermometer in your oven. Not a chef, just a passionate home cook. ETA, I meant volume and not weight. A cup of milk will always be a cup of milk, depending on how you're filling the measuring cup. A cup of flour can vary a whole of a lot, but an exact cup of flour will always weigh the same. Story 17, not a chef, just Italian. Now, at last, I can rant on how to cook pasta for the love of what's holy. Wait for the water to reach boiling point before dumping the pasta in it. And remember to salt the water. Nobody likes eating starch glue. Furthermore, when making spaghetti, try to use a proper pot. It shouldn't be necessary to break the spaghetti in half in order to cook them. Story 18, mise en place. Have all your stuff lined up and ready to go before you start. You don't want something to burn because you're busy looking for the tablespoon or opening a can of something. Also, read the recipe thoroughly first, online ones especially. Many a time the instructions were unclear or the poster made a mistake. Story 19, MSG is half salt and half glutamate. It's very common to try to get glutamatummy into foods. Parmesan cheese, soy sauce, anchovies, Marmite, miso, tomato paste, they're all loaded with glutamate. They of course have their own places in cooking. MSG is just the super quickiest I find way to add it directly in the same way that granular salt or sugar are the same for sodium and chloride and sucrose. There's no sin in MSG. All the hype is bullshit at the same time. Do you want to reduce your sodium intake for health reasons? Use half as much MSG as you would salt as a seasoning. You've reduced your sodium intake by 34 while maintaining a very similar flavor profile. The sodium and glutamate both act to enhance flavors, but glutamate, a naturally occurring chemical in your body anyway, doesn't contribute to high blood pressure. Story 20, I'm not a professional, but I humbly suggest learning about ratios and key ingredients. Ruhlman's 2020 Techniques, 100 Recipes, A Cook's Manifesto, and Ratio, the simple codes behind the craft of everyday cooking. Both by Michael Ruhlman and available on Amazon are life-changing. Also, invest in Michael Bittman's How to Cook Everything. It's a primer for beginners and a really great source for experienced chef's cooks to break out of a rut. I often find that I have stuff laying around the kitchen that I need to use, and knowing about key ingredients, ratios, and having a trove of recipes that I trust to be good in their basic state to just pick through in advance makes eating at home a joyful experience for my partner and me. Edit Michael Ruhlman, not Mark. Story 21, seasoning is paramount. I didn't realize this until I got to know my GF's family. Most people way under-season their food or only use the basic salt, pepper, garlic powder, etc. You think baked chicken is bland. You're not seasoning it enough. Olive oil, salt, pepper, rosemary, thyme, garlic powder, and smother in paprika delicioso. Story 22, season in small amounts and taste as you go. You can always add more, but once you've overdone it, you've overdone it. Also, bonus. Cooking is basically food chemistry, and you can counteract different flavors and textures. You can add sweetness to counter bitterness, acid to counter sweetness, agents to thicken a dish, and agents to thin a dish, etc. Story 23, not a chef really by trade, but learned this while I worked as one. Take a small hand towel and either loop it through a belt loop or between your waist and your belt so it hangs over your leg. As you move around, then you always have something to wipe your hands or instruments on, and you don't need to go out of your way to do it. Story 24, just a home cook, but one thing I see frequently done wrong is crowding the pan. If you want to brown your meat, don't fill the pan to the brim. It will only boil in its own juices until it's still pale, but also tough. Just put a few pieces in at once. You can place them on a plate once they're done, and then do the next ones. Story 25, a knife is not a wedge. It's a knife. If you're pushing down to split your food in half, you're doing it wrong. Who's supposed to be cutting the food here? You or the knife? Exactly, you're the brains, the knife is the muscle. So stop leaning in your knife trying to part the breadsea and start slicing. Seriously, if your knife is sharp enough, dragging the blade's length across whatever you want to cut should be plenty to get through it. The weight of the blade is all you need. Story 26, I noticed that there wasn't a whole lot of real chefs in this thread, so I thought I would chime in. Remember that there's a difference between cooking for a living and making 2 to 3 meals a day. We use different techniquestrum spacing, and I feel like Opie was reaching out to professionals and got the peanut gallery instead. I'm just going to lay this out in list form. If you have any questions, I could drill down deeper. Throw your Westhoffs away and invest in some Japanese steel. No, not Shun, not Global. If you're on a budget, look into Mac knives. If you're scared of chipping rust, look into Misono's UX10 line. Learn how to use them right and keep them sharp. Get your together before you start. This is call me Zon Plus. Half of cooking on a busy line is organization. Stop wasting time and movement. A good cook looks like he's not moving at all. The second half is technique. Understand what you are doing. Just about anything can be fixed with a few exceptions. Move away from recipes. Identify the techniques the recipe outlines and learn them. If you're going to use a recipe, buy a scale and scoff at any recipe that doesn't use mass. Learn the metric system. Layer salt, individual ingredients on the pickup. Obviously, don't go overboard, but there will be a noticeable difference in your cooking. Chef wants more acid. If you aren't using an acid component in your cooking, you're missing out on an entire dimension of food. Throw those nasty mitts away and use side towels. Grab everything with said towels. Always assume a pan handle is hot. Don't get them wet. People will steal your towels. Keep them on or in your apron. If your cutting board looks like, chef is going to let you know. Drape with paper towels soaked in bleach and let sit overnight. Don't do this on your stainless line table. It will pit the metal that on your Facebook feed is not real food. Stay away from Rasculinary. Those people are idiots. Stay away from Kitchen Confidential. Those people will eviscerate you. The only appropriate answer is we chef. Story 27, I'm far from a chef, but a decent pan means everything. I was using old pans from Goodwill for the longest time and couldn't understand why everything stuck no matter how much olive oil I used. Got decent pans, changed my life. Everything cooks more evenly. Story 28, this is more than one. If your sauce is too salty, add half a potato. If you're going to be deep frying or making candy, invest in a decent thermometer. If you're making simple drop cookies, you want to mix every stage to totally smooth. Garlic reduces spice. Don't be use fresh cracked pepper. Story 29, when tasting something like soup or sauce, hey, race a guide to adding herbs and spices. Salt you can taste instantly. After stirring it in, if it tastes bland, add more. It's not something that cooks off or in much in a soup or sauce. Black pepper, dry herbs, most other seasonings after adding more, and don't taste until at least 15 minutes have passed. These ingredients infuse and release over time, and you can really overdo it. Beer, winning alcohol. This varies a lot. And in some cases, the alcohol should be added way before the other ingredients to simmer with some onions. Anyway, in cases like adding beer to chili, which I do often, again, dump in about 6 to 8 ounces. Close the lid and let it infuse. Don't taste for 20 minutes. If it still tastes alcohol-y after this, remove the lid and let it cook off more. Fresh herbs add late and as close to serving as possible. In the last 15 minutes of cooking, these are full of flavor and are generally best added near serving time for best flavor. Story 30, since I'm 5 hours late, and there are 4,750 comments before mine, I have no hope of anyone ever seeing this. To avoid boilovers while cooking pasta, you don't have to have a rolling boil. Pasta cooks just fine in hot water, or about 190-200 F, and to keep pasta from sticking to itself, add slowly to water. Adding oil doesn't work. Why that myth keeps perpetuating. Story 31, make your own stock. Save the parts of veggies you didn't use, like ends of onions, inners of peppers, and chicken bones in a Ziploc in the freezer. Just make sure you don't put anything bitter like cabbage or broccoli in. Also, never put lemon rind in. It will make it super bitter and inedible. Sweet things like carrots or squash are a must. Even pieces of apples are delicious. And I always make sure to put in some celery. Put it all straight from freezer bag to pot. Cover with water, throw in a few bay leaves and salt and pepper, and simmer for like 2 hours. I always try to have chicken stock on hand. So much better than store-bought broth. And you control the sodium. Your soups will never be the same. Also delicious to use to cook rice. Story 32, nobody will read this, but here goes. Don't keep fresh basil or tomatoes in the fridge. Save a little pasta water before you strain, and use it to help the sauce thicken and bind to the pasta. Use a spoon to scrape garlic, edit ginger skin off. My go-to recipes are from America's Test Kitchen. They try everything to make sure the recipe is best. They also do the same with kitchen equipment and ingredients. I've also gotten a lot of helpful kitchen tricks from them. Save remnants from the veggies you don't use while cooking, ends, tops, scraps, stuff that maybe just passed pretty, and chicken bones. The more bones, the better in the freezer. When you have enough to fill a large pot, you can make your own stock. Knock the bottom of a head of iceberg lettuce against the counter 1 to 3 times until you can pull the core out or it falls out. Use soy sauce instead of salt when making tuna salad. Leave steak out of the fridge an hour before you make it, so you won't get that unappetizing gray ring around the outside. Don't wash the pan after cooking your meat unless it smells burned. That's the fond and adds more flavor. You can make gravy or enhance the flavor of your stew by adding liquid stock, beer, wine, and scrape it off the bottom. If you know you want, use the fresh herbs you left, chop them, and put them in an ice cube tray with olive oil to cover them up, then freeze them in a freezer bag to use later. You can also save leftover stock the same way. Bake bacon. Don't fry it. ITLL come out flat and evenly cooked. You can put them on a rack on a baking sheet, so they won't be oily, and you can save the fat for cooking other things. If you want to thicken a sauce or stew with baking soda, add cornstarch or flour, add it, and equal parts water liquid from what you're making into a small glass bowl, and mix before adding. This will prevent it from clumping. Bring the liquid to a boil after adding. This activates the slurry liquid powder combo, so it thickens. Add a little at a time. Don't make it too thick. If something is too spicy, add a little vinegar to counter it. You can prolong the life of brown sugar by adding marshmallows to the bag container. If you're already making soup stew, make extra and store it in a Ziploc freezer bag for when you don't feel like cooking. Leave the root into the onion on after cutting off the top, cutting it in half. This will make chopping it easier and prevent slips, loss of fingertips. Check the expiration dates of your herbs, spices periodically. The fresher, the more flavorful. Also, throw out your pre-ground pepper. You can get a pepper mill, or you can get a filled one, use one in the spice aisle. You will use less pepper, and it tastes infinitely better. Buy a wooden or bamboo spatula with a flat top to better scrape things off the bottom of pots, pans. If you buy shredded cheese, make sure it doesn't include cellulose as an ingredient. It's used to keep it from clumping together, but the better companies will use potato or cornstarch to do the same. Wear goggles if you don't want to cry when cutting onions. If you add alcohol to a dish, you can't serve it immediately after. The alcohol needs to cook out so the base flavors come out, or the booze will be too overpowering. I just bought a Tefal skillet, and I'm in love. I use less oil. It cooks evenly, and nothing sticks. I don't know anyone who ever worked at Tefal. If you're making Asian food or need an Asian ingredient, go to an Asian market. They have the best produce, and I always have a hard time meeting the 5 minimum to use a card. Edit to get the garlic smell off your hands, rub them against stainless steel. I know that's a lot, and I'm sure I have others, but it's some of the best I can think of. I'm also sure this will be buried. But if you want some of my favorite recipes for something specific you want to make, you can me. Story 33, salt and citrus. Break down meat and cook them. Marinating your meat in a salty marinade is fine, but don't think 24 hours of this will soak the flavor in better. Story 34, not a chef, but did a fair bit in commercial kitchens from an events perspective where I had to get my hands dirty. First thing I got taught, which way stuck with me, was slice, don't chop. It's an iron, not an axe. Makes things a lot easier. Story 35, develop love affair with salt. Clean as you go. Simplicity is more wonderful than idiotic plating that tries too hard to make you feel you're eating something major. So dumb. Put good food on the plate. Building a meal is absolutely ridiculous in a mid to large kitchens where you have a crew, a brigade to work with. Every single time you are in-house, do some dishes, help for a half hour or so. Your crew will respect you in the best of ways that can have the potential to galvanize your kitchen and retain the same employees for years. Story 36, personally the best tip I've ever picked up is to do with scrambled eggs in a pan. None of that microwave. Consistently stirring the eggs as they scramble and taking the pan off the heat works wonders. Gordon Ramsay did a video on it, I believe. Story 37, time is the most important ingredient in any kitchen. 20-minute meals are okay in a pinch, but if the aim is to impress, set aside at least an hour, if not more. Imp 4-time pon. Story 38, as a lifelong, make up the recipe as they go, chef. Always smell your herb spices before adding them to whatever it is you're cooking. It will help you determine what flavors will pair well. Story 39, bring meat up to room temp before cooking. Put a cold steak from the fridge into a hot skillet. Hello, shoe leather. Same applies to baking, beaking, stewing, broiling, you name it. Let your meat warm up. Story 40, show no fear. Does the recipe say apples that grow a pear, then throw that in the recipe instead? You know how to make normal pancakes? Throw some chocolate chips in there. Now you know how to make chocolate chip pancakes? Don't be the person who asks if you can substitute walnuts with hazelnuts. You're the boss, of course you can. Now you have the hazelnut equivalent of that shitty walnut dish, super glue for cuts. Story 41, if you're cooking a dish that asks for thinly sliced beef, or throw that hunk of meat in the freezer, wait, easier to cut thin when semi-frozen. Yes, I know you could get butchered to it. Story 42, the size and cut of your vegetables has a dramatic impact on how the overall dish will taste. Ever order a pizza, and the onions still taste and feel raw? They cut them too big, and they couldn't finish cooking in the 8 minutes it takes to bake the pizza. Same with dips. If you cut the veggies too large, the consistency of your dip will... Also, there's a right way to cut into round veggies. It drives me crazy when people slice tomatoes and onions and don't pay attention to the direction of the core. Same with oranges or any other veggie or fruit with a core or grain inside. And always make sure the pan or grill is hot before putting anything in or on it. Otherwise, it will stick like a mother and won't sear properly. You'll also be cooking while your equipment is getting hotter and hotter. So those 4 minutes of side instructions won't mean, because your temperature is essentially different for each of those 4 minutes. Story 43, if you're cooking on a budget, buy pasta, potatoes, rice, beans, onions, garlic, canned tomatoes, olive oil, butter, green peppers, salt, pepper, cumin, Italian seasoning, broth. You can make lots of dishes with these. Story 44, flip the burgers once. Edit after reading opposing opinions backed up with facts and evidence. I must redact my statement and conclude that flipping more than once does not hurt the burger, but can in fact make the burger even better. Learn a technique, practice, and perfect it. This will help you learn recipes better. And if you work in a kitchen and the cooks send you for the bacon stretcher, that's a joke and they're screwing with you. Story 45, food service specialist in the Marines vocational school grad. Just relax. You're going to make mistakes. People are going to yell at you, and you're going to be shaken up if you're doing it for money. You're going to make mistakes, but that's okay. You're going to get better, you're going to improve, and you're going to be a better chef and person every day. I promise you. Story 46, use steel pans and pots when you're browning meat or simmering a stew soup. You want it to stick to the bottom. That burnt brown stuff is called fond, and if you scrape it off or deglaze, then add it to a simmering pot, it enhances the taste. My friend's family think my food tastes awesome, and one day they'll be brave enough to admit that it's only because I avoid using non-stick pans. Story 47, utilize conveyor belts to achieve maximum efficiency. Don't just grab some veggies and start chopping while your cooking partner is stuck with nothing to do. Send him some patties on the belt before you get started. Also, be prepared to switch roles when your workplace shifts because the pirate ship tilts. Story 48, dry your meat, fish, chicken off before grilling or searing. Also, don't be afraid of using a lot of oil when doing sauté or searing something. You could drain off what you don't want to eat. Story 49, another tip. I love to roast veggies and potatoes. Put your baking sheet in the oven while it preheats. When you put on your potatoes, they will sizzle and start to caramelize. Also, when roasting potatoes, always leave the skin side up and the fleshy part facing the pan. This cooks them all evenly and helps the skin get nice and crisp. Everyone loves my roasted potatoes, and they're really easy. I cut them, drizzle with some olive oil, season with seasoned salt, paprika, chili powder, onion powder, fresh garlic, and cook them in a 375-degree oven for 40 to 45 minutes using the methods I mentioned. I sprinkle with fresh parsley and put them in a pretty bowl, and it looks like something you spend a lot of time on. Everyone always asks me how I cook them. They literally melt in your mouth. Give it a try. Story 50, as a formally trained executive chef, I was fortunate to be trained under several Paul Bocuse award-winning, gold medalist chefs. I have cooked as a part of a team for the Queen, Bob Hope, and a number of political figures. I worked at Chateau Lake Louise in the mid-'80s and traveled the world of cooking. The number one tip offered in any kitchen is Ms. In place, meaning everything in its place. This is interpreted as study your recipe, the procedure, and understand all your ingredients, tools, and cooking methodology prior to starting. Include also how you will plate and present your dish. In reality, this should only take a few minutes, but is essential. Cook well, live life, and enjoy both simple and fine ingredients. Story 51, chef of 15 years here. Something simple people tend to gloss over. Use salt. I get asked quite often how we as a general populace make food taste so good. It's because we salt everything. Story 52, not a chef by any means, but I cook for a family of 5 a good portion of dinners. My main thing is this: pick up as you go. A messy kitchen is a no-go MO. I start early, cleaning before I start cooking, and I pick up as I go. That way after dinner, if all goes as planned, we're taking our dirty dishes and loading them into an empty dishwasher to get a head start on the next meal. Story 53, never be afraid to add a bit of water. If the dish is bitter, add salt, not sugar. For risotto, butter goes in as you turn off the heat, add lemon, boil potatoes before you roast them. Use spices to make a better impression, add a little bit of something unfamiliar. The same trick you did to get better marks on high school English essays. People have a better critical ability to judge dishes they are familiar with, and have a better reception when they can't recognize all the elements. A little bit of aniseed on roast veggies, paprika on, touch of cardamom in potato leek soup. Trust your nose to know what herbs or spices will go well with your dish. Story 54, turn down your stove. You can have the pan at mid-high temp for the initial time of food getting into the pan, but turn it down to medium while cooking. Too many grilled cheese and pots of rice have been scorched to all, because my friends insist of cooking everything on maximum flame power.